I just watch in awe. But he actually has that fun side, but he also has a much deeper side. He has experienced fire stories in his life. And it is our honor and privilege to get to hear one of those now. So to deliver his speech, Living Life Without Regret, please welcome Damani Roberts.
What's up, everyone? I like feedback. I don't like standing up here and staring at blank faces. Before I get started, I want to give a quick shout out to our host. He approached me 4 or 5 months ago. I don't know, however long it's been, and was like, "Hey, we're doing a class in here." Cool. And in my natural, I grew up an actor. That entertainment is in my background. And so I've never had a problem being on stage. I also grew up in church where I was leading worship since I was 14 and doing plays and things like that. Never had a problem being up here. And arrogantly, the first thought that ran through my mind was, I don't need another class to learn how to speak to people. I do that already. And now I'm a youth pastor. I'm speaking to people, kids. These kids, my favorite little people over there. Hey, guys. I speak to them on a weekly basis. Guys, I don't need another class. Walk in the first day. I love you guys so much. I love y'all so much. I'm the youngest dude in there. And I'm sitting in here thinking, what am I gonna learn? They're not. That's it was a thought. It's the first thought. I'm being honest up here. I'm just trying to. Okay, I love y'all so much, right? But I walk in and I'm sitting there thinking, what can I learn? Everything that, at least I thought, everything that I've done in my life to this point, I've seen it all before. I'm not gonna see anything new in here. And the time that I have spent in each one of Jason's classes, there's so much that I learned. I learned about people's lives. I've learned different ways to communicate with different people. I learned how other people communicate and how to employ some of their skills to the skills that I already have. And it's made me a better speaker. And I didn't think it could. The biggest thing, again, thinking that I could not learn anything, the one thing that I can take away that I've learned is the word extemporaneous. That's too many syllables for me to try to figure out. I had no idea what that was. I heard it the first time and was like, oh, what the heck? Anyways, I have grown as a speaker. I have grown as a pastor, and I've grown as a person from participating in these classes. He didn't ask me to do this. He didn't put it now. Can we give him a hand? And he does it with kids. And I get to sit in on some of those classes, and some of them, Avery and Willard. Hi. Avery and Willard, those guys. But everybody else, there's some other students that even them grow as speakers. In the few times that I've sat in on these classes, watching these kids open up, it's just a testament to everything that Jason has done and what he started at FireStory. So, shameless plug, he's amazing. If you think everything would encourage you, just jump in. Try it out. Give it 2 weeks. And if you don't like it, you didn't hear that from me. With that, I am the youth pastor here at Anthem Church, and I'm excited to get to stand in front of you all today. It's definitely a pleasure. I don't speak from this stage. Sunday at 9 a.m. we have a service here. I'll be leading worship, so after you hear me speak, come hear me sing. It's even better. It's a pleasure to be before you, and I just want to start with a disclaimer. I'm going to talk about living life without regret. It is much, much easier said than it is done. I'm working through it currently. There's a part of the story that you'll hear this evening I still have not come to grips with. But the one thing that I can say is that without the decisions that I've made, I would not be here. Without the decisions that you have made, you would not be here. This story starts, like most stories, not in 1966, but in 1996, with my dad. Actually, it starts well after that. I didn't ask him this question the day I was born. It was some years later. It was about 12 or 13. I have an older brother. Total sidebar, really quick. Everybody on my dad's side starts with D. Like, all of our names start with D. We grew up in church, okay? My whole family grew up in church. And my family runs deep in my home church. Like, mom's a worship leader, uncle is the minister of music, Gramps was a pastor, my dad is a part of every choir, my brother is now the children's minister of music at that church. Like, we are in that church. I'm the outlier because I'm now over here. But everybody starts with D, right? And it would bother me. You ever have, like, somebody that you meet one or two times and they're really, really cool? Like, think back to your childhood days if you can, right? Someone that, like, you think is really, really cool, they remember your name, and they see you and they're like, oh, Jason, it's so good to see you. Mike, it's so good to see you. How you doing, buddy? He's like, they remember me. Yeah, that didn't happen with me. Everybody started with D. So they would fumble over, my own mother would fumble over my name every day of the week. Desmond, boy, come here. I thought my name was Boy for like 5 years of my life, because growing up with three siblings, right? Danielle, my older sister, Desmond, my youngest brother, and then Damien, my older half-brother, who we'll talk about in a second, they just forgot. So I thought Boy was my name for quite a while. Now, my parents regret that, and I know they do. I'm talking to my dad. I'm 12. I'm thinking about my older half brother, and at 12, I was starting to, like, realize things that were happening. I have an older brother that doesn't call my mom mom. It's confusing. That's mom. That's not Donna. That's mom. Why are you calling her Donna? So I asked, but he called my dad Dad, so I figured, oh, well, there's one thing we have in common. Let me go talk to that person and see what's going on. So I asked my dad, I'm like, hey, question. What's the deal here? What? Like, obviously, if he's not calling mom, that means he's got a different mom. Little did I know, I didn't even know this until I was 12 or 13. I grew up with this lady and her husband and their kid, Dominique, which, by the way, why is it my dad's whole side of the family and then my brother from one of his previous relationships didn't like it? Anyway, not knowing that this is the mother of my half brother. So I asked my dad, like, I know what the Bible says, and y'all were never married, and that's wrong. So, Dad, like, give me some stuff. What do you got? What do you got? Semi-pro football player, and I wish I should have brought a picture. My chest, like, dude was huge. All of that muscle has since moved to his stomach. He's got, like, this nice beer gut now. It looks like he's pregnant 24/7. Dad, if you watch this, you didn't hear that. But I realized this is what my dad looked like. So there was no shortage of opportunity. We tracking? Cool. Awesome. He tells me this story, and I'm like, all right, so now you are married to my mom, happily, apparently. What do you do with that? How do you reconcile that relationship? What's the deal there? Do you like wish that you could have married Janice? It's like, what would your life look like if you had done that? Do you regret not staying with her? Do you regret having Damien? My dad goes, son, every decision that I've made has led me to this point. If I didn't have your older brother, I don't know if your mom and I's relationship would be as strong as it is. I don't know if we would have gotten married, which means I don't know if you would have been here. time out. How does that, so you don't regret your decision? No, I don't feel bad. Was it a stupid decision at the time? Yeah. Am I happy about it? I mean, it brought me you, so. Aw, Dad, you love me. It's cool. You don't regret a mistake. But it brought you to me, so you're happy. It's wild. It's wild to think about. So some years later down the line, I'm a little older. I'm 14, 15, 16. And I thought about it over again. We went to a family gathering, and I saw my older brother, who I love him so much. He is the father of two of my beautiful nephews, Declan and DiMaggio. Yes, he kept the D train going, and I'm sick of it, quite frankly. Love them to death, though. They're great. They're awesome. I'm talking to my mom, and we're talking about something completely different. We're talking about school. My mom, when she was 24, had the opportunity to go to Arizona State University on a full-ride theater scholarship. And we're talking about this. I'm like, Mom, excuse me? I went to Iowa to play football on like an 80% scholarship. That wasn't even fully paid, but I got out of there. I was up and out. Took that opportunity immediately. I loved sports, so I was good at football. I had the opportunity. I took it. Gone. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. I left. Think, Mom, why wouldn't you go? You love theater. My mom is where I got my voice and my looks from. Actually, it's probably like 70-30, 70 mom, 30% dad. I just hope I don't inherit his gut. Anyways, talking to my mom, and I'm like, why didn't you take that opportunity? Why didn't you go to Arizona State? She's like, well, met your dad. You met my dad. Mr. I already have a kid. And you decided he's the one. Him. Like, all right, whatever. Do you, boo-boo. Like, if that... Congratulations. But we talked about what does that relationship look like? How did you, Mom, figure that out? So, Janice, right? Damien's mother. My mom and her, like, know each other well. We grew up in church together. I saw them interact all the time, and I'm thinking, you know this. I don't know about you. It couldn't be me. It wouldn't be me. I wouldn't be sitting there in that relationship with this woman. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. My mother was a different breed, though. Like Louise, different breed. So she still is in contact with us. I'm like, Mom, how does that make you feel? Like, you love Damien. I see her interact with Damien. Damien does not call her mom. I called her by her first name, but I didn't understand why she didn't do it to Damien until I realized, right, it's not his mom. But you're just okay with that? Like, you just put up with it? What gives? What's the problem? Do you think about that often? How is that not a sore spot for you, Mom? Like, how are you not constantly having problems with my in the past? Mind you, they also have a relationship. I just want to put that out there. My mom, my dad, Damien's mother, and his stepdad, I think they're married, his stepdad, like, know each other and talk. I'm confused. Mom, what gives? What's the deal? How do you reconcile that? How do you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, how do you deal with that? Do you not regret what if you should have gone to ASU, Mom, you had a full ride scholarship. Now, looking forward, Mom, I love you so much. You are my hero. My mother decided, I'm not going to tell you her age, but she decided recently that she was going to go back to school. Finished school, now has 2 master's degrees, has since written a slew of screenplays and is a part of a writing team and works in the entertainment industry actively. That and is also now teaching at an all-girls Catholic high school in Orange County, doing speech and debate. My mom is doing the thing. Like, I'm not going to use her age, but she's doing it. I think back, Mom, what would have happened if you would have done it sooner? You know, Damani, no. Because what happens if I go to ASU and I meet somebody else? Maybe Daryl's not your dad. Maybe you're not here. Maybe your sister isn't here. Maybe Desmond's not here. So no, I don't regret my decision. Okay, Mom, like whatever. I get it. You love me. Cool. Sappy moment. I'm not good with sappy moments, if you can't tell. Like, I'm an emotional human being, but they just don't compute with me very well. But it's just this awesome moment of 4 years prior, my dad told me the same thing. It's almost like, you guys are married. No, Damani, I don't regret my decision. Because I have your sister, and I have you, and I've got your little brother. Wow. We're going to shift gears here for a moment. Raise your hand if you like money. Don't be afraid. Come on. You can't not like money, right? Money is not a sin. The verse, right? Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all. Sorry, I'm a pastor. I can't help it. I had the opportunity. So I told you guys my background is in the entertainment business. My mom decided when I was 4 years old that she was just going to start throwing me into auditions and stuff. It was a way that it happened. It was actually kind of cool. That's another story for another day. But when I was 4, I started acting. And from 4 to 15, run on the entertainment business. I'm not tooting my own horn here, but beep beep. Check my resume. Google me, Damani Roberts. I'm on IMDb. Pretty extensive resume. It's a good read. Check it out. I'm not saying that to be like, oh, it's an acting. No. Different part of my life, different story. I'm done with that side of things. I tell you that because entertainment industry, when you're an actor, you have this thing. You have this thing called a trust fund, and before you turn 18, you're not allowed to touch it. So a percentage of everything that I earned went into this trust fund. And when I turned 18, that's when I got up and out of the house and went to Iowa because I was trying to get away from everything and anything that had to do with my household. Not because I didn't love my mom and my dad or because I didn't love my church family. No, I just grew up in church and so was sheltered. I also was homeschooled until my sophomore year of high school. I also didn't have a phone until my sophomore year of high school. And so there were a lot of things that I was missing, right? And now I turn 18 and I got this money. Don't give 18-year-olds a lump sum of cash. Don't do it. You will regret that decision. You'll be living with it like I am for a long time. When I graduated high school, turned 18, literally one day after the other. Graduated June 16th. My birthday's June 17th. Shout out to the Geminis in the room. Woo, woo. Nobody? Sick. All right, awesome. All right. So, graduate, turn 18. Damani Roberts, young, immature, ready to get out and be a part of the world, had $123,000 at my disposal. Now, it doesn't seem like that much. And really, looking at life, $123,000, it's not a lot of money. But to an 18-year-old who hasn't had a chance to touch anything that he's earned since he was 4, oh yeah. I was ready. I'm buying myself a car. I'm moving out. I'm getting my own condo. I'm going to dinner every week at McDonald's because I can afford it, right? I got cheeseburger money now. Hello. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do the thing. So I up and leave and go to Iowa. At this point in my life, everything that I had done had pretty much come easily. I I am blessed. We are blessed. The Roberts family is blessed. We are just a very gifted and talented family. Thank you, Jesus. Not tooting my own horn, but beep, beep yet again. We pick things up really easily. My brother is a recording artist. He's got music out. My sister is a better artist and musician than I am. My mother, oh my goodness, you should hear her sing. You think I can sing? Anyways, we're just a talented family. So everything in my life to that point had come pretty easily. I didn't have to work for anything. And then on top of that, you hand me $123,000? I'm gone. Doing everything. I don't know. I know about it, but like money and doing things the right way, I'm just going for it. So I go to Iowa on a football scholarship. I do absolutely nothing in terms of academics. First semester, this is the most embarrassing letter I've ever got. They were like, hey, you are now on probation. But that to me, that meant I have another semester. So I had another semester of the exact same thing. I met some of the coolest people in my life. $120,000 sitting in my back pocket. People gone in less than a year. August, I left for school. May, I came home. Broke. Literal prodigal son story. Nothing left. Blew it. Then I had to start working. Now I don't have just this lump sum of change. I bought everything under the sun. My beautiful car, she doesn't look as beautiful right now because I haven't been as good to her as she's been to me. But anyways, bought a car. That $123,000 that I got at 18. That's the only thing, and my PlayStation. That and my PlayStation. Those are the two. Isn't that crazy? $123,000, and all I have to show for it is at the time a $26,000 car and a $500 PlayStation. Kids, don't do what I did. Don't do what I did. Nothing to show for it. Now I got to start working. I don't have money to just live on, and I'm back home. So I get a couple jobs here and there, and I start thinking about, dude, I had $100,000. There are so many things that I could have done. And it eats at me to this day. This is the thing that I am working on not regretting. I'm actually really happy that my students are in here today. So I get to tell you guys the same thing that my mom told me. The same thing that my dad told me. I'm not necessarily happy with the decisions that I made because my life would look a little bit different. Maybe. But I'm happy with where I am because if I didn't make those decisions, Julie, I wouldn't have met you. Luca, I wouldn't have met you. Avery, I wouldn't have met you. Gianni, I wouldn't have met you. Will, I wouldn't have met you. Tom, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be at Hampton Church. I wouldn't be speaking in front of you all today. I wouldn't have the opportunity to pass on a little bit of knowledge that I've gained over my short 26 years on this earth to you and to everybody else in here. Ladies and gentlemen, our lives are comprised of bits and pieces of wisdom that we learn from other people. Things that we watch that really, really speak to us. Oh man, I could use that. Some people have bigger influences than others. We take more from certain people than we do from others. But the truth is, everybody that we meet has an effect on our life. Every decision that we make has an effect on our life. Every choice that you make creates a story. And you're here. Each decision that each person has made in this room today has led you to this moment right here. And maybe you're not happy with all of your decisions. Maybe you wish you could go back and change some things. I'm sorry, Back to the Future doesn't exist. There are no time machines. You can't go and change it. But you are here today. And what that means is you have an opportunity to change what your future looks like. You have an opportunity now to better decision based on the knowledge that you have. And this is where it gets really, really cool. You have the opportunity to share everything that you've learned with those around you. If you have children, you have the opportunity to impart to them the wisdom that you have earned over your time on this earth. So don't regret where you came from. Don't look back with shame and remorse and an air of repentance. No. It's okay. You're here. And no matter what your story looks like, ladies and gentlemen, you have an opportunity to share that with those around you. And maybe, just maybe, those people will take that little piece of your life, add it to their story, and change their lives for the better. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not easy. It's much easier said than done. I'm working through it myself. But I encourage you, live your life without regret. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to invite everybody to take just a moment to stand up and give a big stretch. There we go. Feels good, right? See, Damani doesn't have to stand up and take a big stretch, but us old people sure do, right? Oh, I tell you, it was a unique talent. I also saw Chase, who's the lead pastor here at this church, stick his head in. Chase, now I know why you come here dressed in like a t-shirt, is because these lights are hot. I feel like I'm at McDonald's under one of those heat trays up here. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker moving along is somebody who I think Luis would say has those Hamp qualities. This is a person who, every time I get on the phone with him, my wife gets mad because it'll be 2 hours later and I'll still be on the phone with him. That is because he is an extraordinary human being, but best of all, he's an extraordinary listener. There's a quote out there that says, being listened to, and this individual certainly embodies that spirit. But he's got something more to share. He's got an extraordinary story that has happened to him just in the last couple of years. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm going to let him tell you. For his speech entitled, The Mission, please welcome Michael Walsh.
Greg Jackson, there you are. During the course of our class last week, Greg and I got into this conversation about the word mission. And as always, that led me to do some research. And what I learned is it makes sense that we can't agree on what mission is because it took the dictionary 4 pages to explain what a mission is. So what is a mission? A couple of thoughts. An important job, especially a military, that's one definition. Any work that somebody believes it's their duty to do. Something you want to do or achieve. In business, it's a group of people whose job is to increase what is known about their country, their organization, their religion, and in another area, in another country, a lot. In January of 2010, a 7.2 earthquake wrecked Haiti. It hit right around Port-au-Prince, and over the course of the next several weeks, over 50 additional earthquake tremors will hit Port-au-Prince. Haiti does not have a building code, and it is devastated. To this day, they do not even know how many people died because the government was immediately overwhelmed and started to bury these poor souls that were lost in the earthquake in mass graves. They do not know how many people died, but they know over 3.5 million people were displaced. It was an absolute tragedy. And as this news played on television, somewhere in Wisconsin, a guy named Jake Wood was watching the TV, setting himself up with breakfast and watching the morning news. He learned about Port-au-Prince and the devastating earthquake. And on the TV, there was a little crawl going underneath with a phone number. And Jake called. He said, "I'm a Marine, I have skills, I can help. Send me out there, I can get this done." And the person on the other side of the phone said, "Well, we won't be sending people for some time yet, but we would appreciate your donation." Jake didn't do what most of us would do and decide, well, I tried. What Jake did was he called a bunch of his Marine friends. See, Jake was a Marine sniper. He served in Afghanistan, and he had some skills. He called some Marine buddies, finally found one that would go with him on a trip to Haiti, and they flew to the Dominican Republic, right next to Haiti, so that they could help. Along the way, they picked up, believe it or not, 6 other military veterans who heard what they were doing and decided to join them. One was a doctor, one was a medically trained Navy corpsman, and the other guys were just there to help get it done. They went in Dominican Republic, they filled trucks full of water, food, and medical supplies, pretty much whatever they could get, and then they did something that was illegal. They crossed the Dominican Republic into Haiti without authorization. Jake described it in his book as knowing how it felt when Caesar crossed the Rubicon River and started the Italian Civil War. Once you cross this river, there's no going back. And Jake and his team went in to help in Haiti. You can imagine what they saw. With 3.5 million people that don't have any place to sleep but the street, without food, without water, they were dealing every day with some of the most. Their worst situation was, of course, all the hospitals were overwhelmed, and so they went to the hospitals to help triage because, again, in the military, there is some experience with triaging wounds. So they went there and started making a difference at the hospital, dealing with little children with broken bones and dealing with grandparents that had been caught in under a building, and they were just, They're just so devastated. In fact, Jake describes a sea of people walking down the street, all in a, like, looking powdery white from the cement that the buildings had been crushed into. And it was very, very difficult for these guys to deal with this. The good news is one of the 8 that was with them was a guy named Brother Jim, a Jesuit from the area, and he did what to some kids and had them go get some beer. They got together, they drank a couple of beers, and they talked about what they were dealing with. They talked about what they were seeing. They talked about things that were bothering them. And it was a major turning point for them to just deal with all of the emotion and all of the pain. Jake realized this isn't that different than being in Afghanistan. He also realized that there are a great deal of American veterans that have these skills. And when he returned back to the United States, he started an organization called Team Rubicon. It was kind of partly because he had to. As the word got out in social media, there were so many people that were donating money that one of his lawyer friends said, hey, we have so much money, I'm a little nervous here. You guys need to open up a charity and put this money to work. And so Team Rubicon was the name that they decided on. Team Rubicon would have its first deployment at Hurricane Sandy. They'd then go on to Katrina, and then Hurricane Harvey in Texas, and over and over and over again, what they were able to demonstrate was that veterans and, forgive the term, kick-ass civilians could go in and take on the mission of helping people during their worst days. If you're part of Team Rubicon, you're called a gray shirt. Remember this, Sharon? My wife's a gray shirt, thank you. You get your gray shirt, you're also taught about this organization and its culture. The way I was introduced to Team Rubicon, because for most people that hear that, they think it's a Jeep club. Team Rubicon was putting on a class at the Veterans Association of North County in Oceanside, where I volunteer. I'm also a veteran, and I'm involved in veterans causes, and so I was there at Vance when a little 5'0" gal from Mexico City named Lorena Bricker came in to prepare for a class, and I said, Team Rubicon, what's that? She looked at me and she was like kind of irritated, trying to put her class together, and she's like, you have a computer, go look it up, look at it yourself. So I went out and I looked, and what I learned was Team Rubicon is a disaster response organization that helps people on their worst days. I thought that was interesting. Then I saw their rules, and rule number 1 caught me. Rule number 1 in Team Rubicon, again, this is a quote, don't be a dick. When you respond with Team Rubicon, you need to understand that we hold ourselves accountable to a different level. It is a militarily run organization. It's led by military, or should I say veterans, but we have so many different people involved in the organization that the cultural principles really pop up for many of us. One of the best ones I heard during the course of the class that I was taking was mission first, gray shirts always. And what they told me that meant was we're always going to take on the mission. We're always going to go to Haiti. We're always going to knock it down. We're going to do what needs to be done. But we're always going to take care of our people. We're always going to make sure our gray shirts are taken care of. And that struck me. I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. Believe it or not, I jumped into that class with Lorena and learned about core operations. And the core operations class teaches you the basics of how to muck out a house when a hurricane or tropical storm into somebody's home. We also have earthquake response. We have Sawyer teams. I just took the Corps Ops class to start, and I thought, okay, I want to go out and I want to get deployed and I want to take on a mission. About 6 months went by. It kept not picking me. I realized later it's because I had one thing on my resume, Corps Ops. But 6 months later, I finally get deployed to Beaumont, Texas. They fly me to Beaumont, Texas. I land there, and when I get out of the plane, I'm looking around the airport, and thankfully, folks are wearing these, so I can find them. We get together, we get in a van, and we drive out to Beaumont, Texas from Houston. So a few hours drive. We end up in a Baptist church gymnasium on cots. Out in the parking lot is all this equipment. There are shovels, there are rakes, there are chainsaws, there are sleds to take materials out of the houses that we're working on. And I kind of look around and like, okay, this is interesting. I don't know any of these people. I don't really know much about Corps Ops except for the class I took. I feel like I'm generally ready. But I'll tell you what, rule number one made it so easy. Everybody was so pleasant to deal with. And despite that first night of having a little bit of a little trouble going to sleep, you know, around 69 of your closest friends in a gym in Beaumont that had just gone through a tropical storm that dropped 46 inches of rain in a day. I went to bed a little nervous, tossed and turned on that little canvas cot. When we woke up, I met my strike team. I will never forget my strike team, the people that I went out on my first deployment with. In fact, it's Craig's birthday today. Craig Finnegan from Houston, one of my strike team leaders, or one of my strike team members. It's his birthday today. We all said happy birthday. That deployment was back in 2019. But Karen was from Boston, and she was our strike team leader, and she was wicked nice. She showed me what it meant to be a strike team leader, how mission first, gray shirt always should look. And that was making sure, you know, it was 90 degrees and it was hot and humid, and we were working in houses that had been filled with up almost 4 feet of water. And these houses, when water gets up to 46 inches, that's all water. That includes sewer water, and that includes toilet water, and it includes water, all kinds of water, black water. Those walls, those carpets, everything in that house was just wrecked. And Karen and Craig and me and Poppy, a guy who works in New York who's in works for the town that he lives in Puerto Rico, and he was a huge help while we were there. And then Mark Smuda, who was a fireman in Connecticut. The 5 of us made up the strike team, and we went to work. We showed up at the house. We started tearing out 4 feet of drywall, ripping it down, pulling out the insulation, getting the bones of this house dry, and stopping mildew and mold from growing so that this house could be recovered. We tore up the floors. We tore out the bathrooms. We basically stripped this house of everything. And the homeowners, people, imagine this is your house, and you watch us demo the entire thing. And they're hugging us, and they're thanking us. And I swear, every time we were in another house, these people would go on and on about what it meant to them that we were there to help them. We had 2 FOBs. Now, Greg tells me people don't know what a FOB is, so it's a forward operating base. We had a forward operating base in one part of Beaumont. We had a second one on the other side of Beaumont, and all told, there were 70 people between the 2 of them. I had 35 in mine, there were 35 in the other. On the flight home, just for fun, I pulled out my notebook and I just started writing down the first names of all the people I could remember 29 people whose names I could remember, whose faces I could picture in my head that I met helping other people on their worst days. It was amazing. And I guess you figured it out by now, but I'm kind of hooked. What I saw was a mission that needed doing. What I felt was an organization that was absolutely preparing us to succeed at the mission. Now, as I tell you about that, I want you to understand that I've been on a number of 20-something deployments at this point. I'm now a Sawyer instructor. I teach other people how to use a chainsaw safely, where we literally will deploy during a storm. The day before the hurricane arrives, we are in position so that when the hurricane arrives, we are the first ones on the roads to cut down blocking the highways so that the emergency vehicles can get by. I think this is probably one of the most impactful things I have chosen to do for myself, and by doing for myself, I get to help other people. It's pretty special. When I talk about this means a lot to me. But I don't mean to imply that the only way that you can find a mission that means something special to you is to join Team Rubicon. Team Rubicon is something I found. But if you look in San Diego County, what you would find is that there are over 1,000 organizations helping other people. But you'll never feel anything like getting the hug from a homeowner when you've done something to help them on their very worst day. If you can find that opportunity to go do for others just a week out of your life and take on a project and take on the mission of helping others in a time and in a world that is, I think it's an impact that you won't forget and the people you touch won't forget. I will also share that when you find your mission, or as you look for those organizations to get involved in, I encourage you to be thoughtful about it. Find out what the culture of this organization is. Understand what their FireStory is, what it is that, notice there's a big difference in mission for me flying from my home to Beaumont and Jake flying to Dominican Republic and crossing illegally into Haiti. There's all different sizes of mission. Really, it's on page 4, Greg. But find a mission, and what you'll find is that you'll get so much more from the mission than you ever put in. And to me, if I can leave you with one thought beyond all others, it's those of us in the military take the idea of a mission as just what we're used to. If you're not used to this idea, then try something. Try something that is more than a day, that will require you to use your skills and go out and do something that helps someone else, and tell me if you don't feel the way I felt. Thanks.
I got it. Got it? All right. I would like to point out, with the recent hurricane that hit in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis got on the news and called out Team Rubicon as being one of the earliest people who came in and helped them after the disaster. Something else. Well, folks, we've rounded third and we're heading home. But before we do, we have one more exceptional speaker. And this is another individual who I have had a lot of time and a lot of experience with. Some of you out there know John Richardson as well. And he always has a unique and fascinating story to share. He also seems to always have toys that he's bringing with him. So I'm going to pull out this table so that he has a spot to put his various items. Is this okay, John, right here? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please, for our final speaker tonight, put your hands together and give a warm welcome to John Richardson.
Have you ever had someone give a vision of your life to you, what they think that you should do with the rest of your life? Maybe a parent, maybe a teacher. The year was 1972. I was just turned 17. It was the first week, and there I met Cletus Smith. Everybody called him Cleet. He was about 20, fluffy bob of hair, had a Tom Selleck mustache, this great smile, and he had these eyes that just cut through you. And he was looking at me, and it's like, whoa. He said, have a seat. And I sat down, and he had two things in his hand. He had a notebook, and he had a sheet of paper. And the sheet of paper was my transcript. And he said, John, looks like you've been doing pretty good. You got a solid B average. It's at the end of your junior year. You've taken summer school. You've taken all the maximum classes. So if you take summer school this year, you could actually graduate. Not that I would recommend it, but you could actually graduate. And I thought, this is interesting. But he said, and the reason I was doing college prep in 1972 was I didn't want to be drafted. I know people have to think back, but their draft was still going on in 1972, so college prep was a rather big thing. So he put it in front of me, and he started flipping the pages. And this guy, Cleet, had gone out. It was his second year at Workman High School, and he had gone out to all the alumni that had gone through the programs, and he had taken pictures, some Polaroid pictures, regular 4x6s, and he put them together in this notebook. And they had all the businesses that these people went to, and it was pretty cool. I'm looking through the pages, and it's like there's an accountant, there's someone that's in telecommunications, there's someone that's in aerospace, and gosh, 69, we'd just gone to the moon, so everybody was into aerospace. And these jobs looked pretty interesting, and he had what it would take me to get there. And he said, well, you got to be average, so you're going to have to go to junior college, probably finish up your senior year. So what we'll do, and you look on each of these pages, and it had the classes that I would need to take for my senior year. It had the classes I would need to take at junior college. Then I could go to a 4-year college, and then possibly even grad school. But then I would get out, and I would make a job. I'd have this really cool job. 72, the average income of people was $10,000 a year. So I could get one of these jobs, white collar, and I could make from $10,000 to $12,000 starting out in this great occupation. And I looked, and it's like, man, I could be an insurance agent. I could be run a business office. And the interesting thing was, what was interesting but also concerning about this is that I flipped the pages, all the people looked the same. They all had either a blazer on or a white starched shirt with a thin necktie. These were all guys because that's how the counselors worked back then. And they all were in cubicles. And on the table in the cubicle was a typewriter and an ashtray. And I realized something that my dad had told me a long time ago, is that the gist of your job is what you do every day. And I realized that these people sat at a desk in a cubicle, typed on a typewriter, and smoked cigarettes. And so the only choice that I really needed to make was what brand of cigarettes that I wanted to smoke. And it was only going to take me about 7 years a year of my senior year, 2 years of junior college, and 4 years at some college out there that I might have to spend a lot of money to go to get a job making the average salary of $10,000 to $12,000. And it was like somebody was choking me. It's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to sit in a cubicle all day. And I never really thought about what I was going to do. You know, my dad was a photographer and an artist, and he just always just said, "You'll figure it out, John." Well, this was the day I was going to figure it out because I had to make a decision. I had to have a vision for the rest of my life. And boy, did Cleet have a vision. He said, just pick one of these pages. It's all set up. It's all listed, and we're ready to go. Well, guess what? I'm just sick, and I was like, man, I don't want to end up in a stupid office with a typewriter. I didn't like typing, and I certainly didn't like smoking. I'll tell you a little bit of my home life at the time. My mom drank a bit, and she smoked quite a bit, and my mom and I didn't get along. So I had a part-time job as a janitor that I worked till about 9 o'clock at night, and my only freedom was my car. And I worked enough to get gas so I could go off and do things. The thought of 7 years, maybe at home or maybe in a bachelor apartment, working with my mom where she smoked and everything, it just is like, there was just nothing that looked good. So I looked at Cleet and I said, do you have something else? Hit him right in the eyes, and his eyes just dropped, and he goes, what do you mean? How about this? How about this insurance agent? How about this, an office manager? And he goes back and forth, and I didn't want to get in an argument with him. So I just said, do you have something else? And I'm really lucky that he didn't fight me on it, because he looked at me, he looked down at my transcript, and he said, I see that you've taken auto shop. He goes, I have a brother-in-law that works at the Ford dealer. He works in the back. He actually likes it. He goes, I had a flyer come in from this junior college that's just outside our district, Citrus College up in Azusa, and he puts the flyer in front of me. And here's a 2-year course in automotive technology, and it was cool because I looked down the page of what it required, and it was just 2 years, and it said top graduates make $10,000 to $15,000 a year after a few years in the business. It's like, wow, I could go to this school for 2 years and I could come out making more, average or better money. And it was really interesting. And the bottom line, the bottom thing on there just really kicked over. It said, freedom from the cubicle. And I knew that I had to sign up right then and there for Citrus College Automotive Technology program. So I filled out the paperwork, I handed it back to Cleet. And then he looked down and he said, I lied to you, John. You have to pass Algebra 2 because you've got a D- touching on an F. And if you don't pass that and take summer school, you're going to have to do your senior year. And man, it's like, I don't want to have to do another year. I want to get into this automotive technology program. So that's when I just looked at him and I said, man, I don't get Algebra 2. I said, half the grade is based on homework. I work as a janitor at night. I get home at 9. I don't have time to do homework. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't make any sense to me. And he goes, well, you're going to have to get at least a C on that final test, and it's next week. You got a week to study up on it. Man, I tell you, my vision got shot from the heavens to hell, because it was, we're just taking the worst test in the world. I just did not like algebra. My teacher would come in and put a few these weird equations on the board, talk to about 5 minutes, and he'd said, read the book, and then you'd go home and do an hour of homework at home. It's like, what kind of class was this? It was just crazy. But just about then, as I'm explaining this, on the shoulder, and I looked around, and it was Cheryl Fujimoto. It was a friend of mine, Clyde Fujimoto. It was his older sister. And she was working in the office at Workman High School, helping some of the girls on their accounting classes. And she looked over at me. She said, I overheard you, John. She goes, I think the problem is you don't see the number. And it's like, what? What's that? How do I see it and how do I feel the numbers? She said, she went back to her desk and she pulled out an abacus. And she started moving the numbers around, and she would move them and she would put them out. And this, to me, was seeing 10 rows of beads and 10 beads on each row. And this was something that actually made sense. All of a sudden, it's like she's doing simple things. Let me show you some items here. You know, she would move 2 beads over and 3 beads over, and she'd go, okay, what's 2 plus 3? That's 5. You know, I mean, I had that in 4th grade. I don't need that. But she said, you do it. You take your fingers, you move the beads over, you move them over again. And I want you to do subtraction. Let's do some subtraction. Let's do multiplication. So we moved them over. Let's do division. We moved them over. And then she said, you know, I've showed you how to do it. You've done it with your hands. Now do something for me. Close your eyes and move them again. And I closed my eyes and I started moving them. She would tell me what the equation was, like 3 plus 2. I would move 3 beads, 2 beads. And it was interesting because I could see this in my mind. I could feel it and I could see it. And she said, you can see in your mind what's going on. And it all of a sudden clicked, and I was able to go through the different pieces, and I realized, and this is in hindsight many years later, but I was a kinesthetic learner. I wasn't audio or visual. I was visual to a certain extent, but I was a hands-on person. And it was when I went hands-on that things started to make sense. And I started doing these equations with this, and it was like, wow. Kinesthetic learner, something that's really important is that you see the big picture. And this abacus was the big picture. Even though I couldn't do really heavy-duty addition or subtraction on it. But the thing you got to realize with this whole thing is in 1972, we didn't have calculators. All we had was a slide rule, and I hated the slide rule. But this revolutionized the way that I thought. And then she went a little bit further, and she handed me this book called The Magic of Math, published by a guy named The Math Magician. And this was so cool, because this guy had flunked math 3 times. I was only flunking once. But this guy realized that he started searching around and started talking to tutors and things, and realized that there was people all who had grown up in Japan with an abacus. Once he started working with an abacus and some other manual things, math started to make sense. And one thing that he learned, and one thing I learned really quick in this book, is when you start working equations in your head, when you do them on paper, you're basically doing them from right to left. He said, when you do them in your head, do them from left to right. And oh my gosh, I will tell you the truth. Once I started doing this, I read the first chapter, I did some of the sample exercises, and all of a sudden I'm adding columns of 10 or 15 numbers just like that. It's like, whoa! I was taking these numbers that were 4 or 5 digits long, 2 or 3 different ones with all sorts of remainders and everything that would take me a while to do on paper. And I was doing them as fast as you could do now on a calculator. But I was doing them left to right with some of the tricks that he taught in the book. And it was just the most amazing thing in the world. And all of a sudden I realized I had a different vision. Once I had this and I knew the tricks, I looked at it differently and it started making sense. I would say to any students in the room, pick up this book or books like this, because if nothing else, even though we've all got calculators now, and we've even got phones that pick up, algebra equations and do them for you, sometimes you need to do simple math. And boy, there's nothing better than to be able to do it fast. it's hard for me to remember 50 years ago when I was sitting in that office doing that, but that made all the difference. I tell you what, I went home, I did a chapter a day, I took that test the following week, and the other thing in the book that was so cool is for most of them, he said, look at the thing. He said, here's all mathematics, but they can only test you on what they've taught you. So you don't have to learn the whole thing, you just have to learn what's in the book. So realize they can't test you on anything that's not in the book. And realize this too, they're mostly multiple choice. So if there's 5 questions on there, and you take, okay, which is the right question, the right answer? But he said, mark off the ones that are wrong. And it's pretty easy. You go in and go, oh yeah, that's not it. Cross those out first. Now you've only got 2 to worry about. You can do the equation just far enough to tell which one is the right answer. It saved me an amazing amount of time. I passed that test the next week with like a 98%. And the only reason I didn't get 100 is I fooled myself thinking that they had done a trick question when it wasn't really a trick question. But I got a C+ in that class. I passed it, and then I went on to Citrus College for the next 2 years, and I discovered something about Citrus College, about the automotive program, is they'd have a book, they would explain to you what they were going to teach you, the teacher would show you how it worked, an engine or doing a tune-up. It was all basically show, they do it, you do it, and then you write your notes down. And it was going hands-on for those 2 years that made all the difference in the world. I came out of that 2-year college knowing all the basics. I had licenses ready to go. And that June, 2 years later, I graduated from Citrus, and that's when the phone call came from my dad's friend who knew a fellow named Leonard Martin. And Leonard Martin had just opened a new repair shop in the city of Upland. And it was really cool because he worked on Mercedes and Volvos. He brought me in at $1.65 an hour, and he started teaching me about Volvos and Mercedes. And I thought, he said, well, we'll get you moved up as soon. And the interesting thing was, it didn't take very long. And the first guy that came with a Volvo, the first guy was this guy named Aldo Schmidt. He was a professor at the Claremont colleges, drove a 544 Volvo, and he had the worst attitude I've ever seen. The guy smoked this Russian huge pipe, so he gets in the car, and I'm just a passenger with him. I'm going back to the college to bring the car back. And Leonard said, just ride with him. I think it's got a bad U-joint. Listen for it as you're going there. So he fires up his pipe, and he's going, and he's shifting. And every time he would shift, he's breathing hard, so he's blowing this smoke out. And he looks over at me, and he sees my name tag. And he goes, what are you? He goes, what are you? You're not one of those grease monkey? Yeah, I guess, yeah. He goes, look at your hands. You're one of those guys that works with your hands. You know, and he starts putting me down, and he starts just saying, he goes, what do you make an hour? I go, $1.65. He goes, yeah, you're going to make $1.65 the rest of your life. Because people that work with their hands you're never going to get any place. You're never going to be a success in life. And he's just going over and over, and he goes, the only way you're going to get success is leave that job right now, go back to school, get at least a master's degree, go on further than that. And like, wow, this guy's got a really bad attitude. But half the things that he was saying were true. I was making $1.65 an hour. My hands were dirty, and I did have a name on my shirt. And so when we get to the Claremont colleges, he goes over a speed bump. He blows out, and all these ashes fly all over there, all over me. I'm on fire. He gets out of the car, and he goes, more education. And it's like, okay. So I drive his car back to Upland Automotive on Foothill Boulevard. We faced Mount Baldy in the back. It's a beautiful shop. And Leonard just to tell you a little bit about Leonard. Leonard was a cross between Ronald Reagan, one of these guys that just loved his particular job. You know, like Reagan used to always just dress, he always was in a suit for, you know, the job. He just, job. And Leonard did too. He's always a pressed uniform, is always neatly pressed, the name right, the shop was always mopped, but he also had a little Jimmy Stewart in him. I mean, oh man, that, you know, he was a guy that you fire him up, you get him pissed off a little bit, and he's gonna run with it. And when I told Leonard what Aldo had said to me, he just fired up. Oh my gosh. Leonard said, you know, I was in I fought over in Europe, and I got out and I got a job in a service station. My parents wanted me to go and be someone who worked with numbers back in New York, because they had all these companies, Martin, and Martin. You know, it was always all the accountants and stuff. But I loved working on cars. Numbers didn't mean anything to me. One time, my dad's brother came in, saw me, and he goes, at the gas station, I put gas in his car, and he needed something else. He goes, wait, aren't you? Yeah, you're Leonard, aren't you? Yeah, what are you doing here? You're a pump jockey. You're a grease monkey. I thought you were going to be an accountant. And he said that time really ticked him off. It just really fired him up. But he said, I'm going to be the best grease monkey there is. And he went out and he got a job at a Ford dealer, and he worked his way up. And within a year, he moved to California, and he got a job on Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena for a company called Lloyd Pearson, Mercedes, and Volvo. He started off as a lot boy, worked his way up, and he ended up being the tune-up guy. And he made these cars purr. Fast forward a few years, he went off and he started his own business, because all the people from LA and stuff were moving out to Upland. And the first thing he said to me, he says, John, he says, you can quit today. He goes, you know, if you're only making $1.65 an hour, but I'm going to give you some reasons to stay. He said, I love this business. I love cars, and I know you love cars too. Take a look around this shop. Let's go over and take a look at this. And we walked over to this nice red 280 SL, and it was the sports model. And it was owned by this guy named Tyrone. And Tyrone was called Ty the FBI guy, because Tyrone worked for the FBI. And he lived in Upland. He drove to the field office in San Bernardino, but then he had to go to the gambling halls, dressing like the top gambler, having all this money to spend and everything else. But he brought his car to Upland Automotive when it wouldn't go 130 miles an hour. If it wouldn't go 130, he was in to see Leonard. And Leonard said, we live and die in this shop by our customers. We've got these great cars. They're really well engineered. They're the best in the world, but we've got the best customers. Ty, they can't do. We have the ability, because the dealer has to use factory parts. Guess what we did to Ty's car? Guess what we did? We put Japanese spark plugs in it. We put NGK spark plugs in this Mercedes, but they had a copper core. So not only would it run 130 miles an hour down the road to Las Vegas, but it would go really good and stop missing and sputting and spurting in the 10 freeway at 5 miles an hour in traffic. So we solved this guy's, Ty's, problem. He sent so many people to Upland Automotive. But then there was another guy, the contractor. This guy, Dave, the contractor. He's got a 240 or a 300 diesel in the back. And his problem was, he had two problems. One, he was all off in the dirt lots with all this dirt and construction in Upland. And his air filter kept plugging up because of all the nails and stuff. So every week he'd have to replace his tires, and he'd come in for a new air filter. Well, we put in this K&N foam air filter. It was the coolest thing. They couldn't do it at the dealer, so we did. It flowed twice as much air, and it captured 10 times more dust. So he wasn't in every week. And then we got some run-flat tires from Michelin that they use over in Africa and put those on his car. He was the happiest person ever. And it was something that only we could do at Upland Automotive. And I'd like to leave you with the last one, because this one really touched me, because there's a gal named Alexis, and she had a 380 SEL, this nice red, beautiful machine, and she had a real estate office. She was the top real estate office person for Century 21, and real estate was huge back then. She's right on Foothill Boulevard, but she's running clients up to 25th Street, which was about 5 miles up the hill, back and forth all day long. And if you know anything about Mercedes, they have really small brake pads, and they squeal like crazy. And she couldn't stand it. She'd pick up customers at the airport and run them back and forth. And this thing is just like, it's like fingernails on chalkboard every time she hit the brakes. She came in and said, "Can't you do anything?" We tried all the Mercedes parts, but then we went to good old Australia, and we got some Australian brake pads that were used on their rally cars. We put them on this Mercedes, and it solved the problem. And I can't tell you how many real estate agents came in after that, but she sent us a lot. She also sold me my first house and my second house there in Upland. But there was something that Leonard had me do that day that I'll leave you with. He had me sit in her car, and he had me just sit in the driver's seat, and he said, "I want you to see what customers see, because customers are our lifeblood. You know, the cars aren't paying our bills. The vision is you've got to treat customers right. You've got to learn about them, see what they need, and you've got to write it down on a repair order. You've got to know them back and forth, but you also got to treat them right. If they've got a problem," he told me something that day that I'll never forget. He goes, "Look out the front of the car." He goes, "What do you see?" I go, "Well, I see the wall." He goes, "What do you see?" I go, "Well, I see the windshield." He goes, "It's kind of dirty." He goes, "Yeah, it's dirty. Now, what do you do? What do you do as a service technician before that car goes away that the customer can see? You clean the windshield. You clean it inside. It comes in here and goes out. You clean the windshield. Because they may not know anything else you've done, but they know that their car has a clean windshield. And I can guarantee you this: every car with a clean windshield runs better, stops better. They are wonderful. So I will say this: my vision, don't let other people steal your vision. When you go into that, any of the students in here, when you go into that counselor's office, if it doesn't sound like what you want, ask the question: is there something different? Is there something better? Don't let the Aldos in the world give you that negative attitude. Don't deal with the trolls. Don't believe them. Find a mentor like Leonard, somebody who's going to build you up and run with you and show you how things are done. And never forget this, because I never forget it. The last thing you should do when you leave for the day is clean the windshield.
Well, everyone, I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for making it out here tonight, making the effort to see some of these amazing stories. I want one last round of applause for our 4 speakers today. Thank you very much. They and everyone else in the program worked very hard to put this together. And my final thing that I wanted to share with you is this. Every single one of you has fire stories in your life. You have experiences that you struggled with, that you battled with, that you fought through, that you conquered. These stories need to be shared. Here at the FireStory Communication Academy, we help with that. In a world that is seeking new ways for people to connect with each other, I think in that room right across the hall, we found a way to connect. So if any of you ever have a story inside you waiting to get out, we'll be here waiting. Thank you very much. One other real quick thing. If any of you are hungry or thirsty or need some refreshment, may I highly recommend, just a couple of doors down to the right is Uncle Tony's Italian food restaurant. It is an amazing little, it seriously is right out of New York City restaurant, and it's a fabulous place to hang out. I'm going to see if I can convince my wife if I can go there. But everybody, have a fantastic night. Drive safe. It was great seeing you all.